Welcome back to Tousi TV, your global news channel. We have some more breaking news, this time coming from Asia, as the communist government in Nepal has now fallen. Their leaders have fled the country and the military are now on the streets in order to bring back some law and order. This anti-communist wave has been started and led by the Gen Z or Generation Z kids who have had enough of not just corruption, high taxes, and also the ban on social media and communication, and a fight, obviously the fight from the government side against free speech and freedom of expression. We're going to give you guys the latest update on this absolute mess of a situation until we discover exactly how the communist parties, multiple communist parties, by the way, some in government and some in opposition. The whole system is completely messed up. Parliament has now, the parliamentary building has been set on fire. The presidential palace has been set on fire. We're going to give you guys all the videos that we also have received. The Gen Z have had enough in Nepal. A recent social media ban in the country sparked mass demonstrations, but the anger behind the protests has been building for years. The main reason that we just had tens of thousands of protesters marching towards Kathmandu and other cities, obviously gathering outside parliament and government offices, is because of the failure of basic leadership. The immediate trigger was the government's decision to block Facebook, X, and YouTube. But underneath all that was the frustration over corruption, authoritarianism, and of course the economic mess thanks to socialist policies. Let's go to the first video. This is the citizens of Nepal storming the Communist Party headquarters and tearing down the hammer and sickle flags. It's happening. It's crazy. Years and years of failure. This was in Kathmandu. And it is interesting that just like what we are seeing in Iran, against the Islamic socialist dictatorship, it's the younger generation. It's the young who have had enough. And they are now leading. Behind them, you now have slightly more older generations finally feeling brave enough to come out. Now, their parents and their grandparents are responsible for what's happened in Nepal, what's happened in Iran, and many other countries right now. But it's the youth that are taking the lead, and it's slightly embarrassing for the rest of the population because it's their job to do this. Now, the next footage shows the citizen, obviously this is actually the Prime Minister fleeing Nepal after he announced his resignation. It's similar scenes that we saw in Bangladesh a few months ago as well. Let's go. It's over. Now, as we said, we did hear earlier on the announcement by the Prime Minister in Nepal, KP Sharma Oli, who announced that, he resigned earlier this morning as riots and civil unrest in Kathmandu and other cities across the country continued, which so far resulted in 19 deaths and hundreds of injuries. It continues to escalate. The international airport has been closed. Smoke fills the city. In the capital, of course. Almost all government buildings have now been brought down. As we said, the parliamentary building and the presidential palace, everything has been brought down, completely, fully damaged. And the government ministers are now being hunted down by the protesters on the streets. Some of the Gen Z protesters stormed the foreign minister's house. This is Arzurana Deuba. and attacked massively, and things went badly. We also do have an update from about the Prime Minister's wife, who has now been found dead because she got stuck in a house and there was fire everywhere. This is the Foreign Minister's house. It's crazy. They're all young, as you can see. They're all young. They're going for the Foreign Minister directly. Yeah, in left-wing countries with socialist governments, the young actually come out against the way policies work. Whereas in the West, in capitalist countries, it's actually the other way around. The young who are enjoying the capitalist societies, they fight against it. They say capitalism is bad, but actually they themselves have benefited from it. There we go. Yeah, so things have been escalating, but the targets have not just been the ministers, as we said, the government buildings, the parliamentary buildings, but also they have decided to attack the media, because, of course, everything in Nepal, in any other socialist country, is controlled by the state and centralized. These are the offices of Kantipur Publications. This is the largest media outlet in Nepal. And guess what the anti-government protesters did to this building? Yeah, you guessed right. It's been brought down.
Oh my God.
I hope evacuate gore.
Yeah, of course, next door in the neighboring country, the Chinese Communist Party are slightly worried about the consequences of what is happening in Nepal. Someone said they're just targeting an innocent old woman. No, it's the government minister, the foreign minister, who has been absolutely atrocious in terms of dictatorship and oppressing and beating up innocent young people in Nepal, taking away their liberties. And now things have escalated. What did you expect to happen when you have a completely authoritarian regime? Do you think people are just going to take the beating? Or do you think in those countries and in those continents and cultures, people are just going to sit back? Oh, no. They're going to get up and they're going to fight back. It's called self-defense. Now, in terms of the palace, I mean, this is completely astonishing. In Kathmandu, the Alliance Palace, the Singadorba, has been completely and utterly destroyed by fire. That was said earlier today. The authorities have said that this might just be the end of it. They don't think they will be able to save this or recover. And of course, there has to be an alternative. Right now, as we said, the army are on the streets trying to bring back order, but it seems to be slightly difficult now, because until now, the only way they could do a crackdown, just like in any other dictatorship, including in the Islamic Republic of Iran, was when people just simply protest. When you protest, then you just shoot a couple of protesters, you arrest a few and torture them, and that's how you do a crackdown. But when the protesters basically say enough is enough, we're going to take over, you don't know what to do, because what else can they do? The army are now there, they're going to shoot at a few people, but they don't have anything else to lose. They've got nothing to lose at this point. And the irony that this trigger was when they said, well, we're also going to be banning your communication and your social media accounts. That was for them. They were like, well, this is it. How do we even communicate with the rest of the world? How can they hear our voice? Well, there's only one other way. If we can't use social media, we're going to have to bring down the government. And that's exactly what they did. Now, the finance minister in Nepal, this is Bishnu Prasad Pudel, was chased and beaten on the street, like the other government ministers, by the protesters. Let's quickly show you what happened with the finance minister. There we go. He's trying to escape, but he can't. And they've taken him. Completely out of control. As I said, the last few minutes, we did get the confirmation that the army are setting up checkpoints, even though obviously the political leaders are nowhere to be seen because they've all fled. But it's essentially going to be the military doing some sort of coup to take over the government. But I don't think they're going to have any level of leadership to be able to actually run the country. So these things will still escalate until you have an alternative. Now, the police obviously with the protests responded with water cannons, batons, rubber bullets at first and tear gas. At least 19 people were killed in the first days of the unrest, 17 in the capital and 2 of them in the eastern city of Itahari. More than 300 people have been injured. A lot of people have been arrested. The government refused to give the actual up-to-date numbers on those who have been taken by the authorities. But this isn't really the end of it anyway. Now, in regards to the situation, why this frustration over bad governance and corruption and economic chaos has been going on, for example, let's look at the unemployment rate. Unemployment has reached a record 12.6%. And it is primarily affecting young people. Last year alone, more than 740,000 people in Nepal left the country in search of work. Obviously, protesters have been carrying signs reading "Enough is enough" and "End the communist corruption." So this is going to also create more domino effect in Asia. In terms of other, obviously, it's the younger generation in that continent who are fed up, on different levels, obviously. And it's not everybody being against the socialist governments, for example, but we've seen issues in Japan. It's the young people in Japan who are fighting against their pro-multicultural government, the progressive government, who want to bring in more migrants into Japan. In South Korea, we've had the young people actually fighting against Lee Jae-myung and his regime. So it's a slightly different situation compared to the Western world and Europe. The young people are fighting for freedom. And a lot of young people in the West, in the actual privileged Western countries, are spoiled and they are fighting against freedom, which makes no sense. Now, as I said, the wife of the former prime minister was found dead after being set on fire inside her own home, and we don't really have any more information on the rest of the cabinet in terms of the government ministers. We will find more info for you guys later. The finance minister, the latest update on him that we have now verified is that he's now been stripped of his clothes and has been chased into a river by the angry protesters. Let's quickly go and see what's going on with the finance minister. That's him on the left. It's basically like an episode of Game of Thrones where they all shout, "Shame, shame, shame." Wow. So he's somehow lost his clothes. As I said, it's very important to know the context of governance in Nepal. There are 3 major communist parties, along with some. The rest of them are not communist parties. They are socialist parties. So that's how the actual regime works. You could either be a communist party or a socialist party. The Communist Party of Nepal, the official one, but this is the Unified Marxist-Leninist Party. They are in government, or they were until now. Then you've got the other Communist Party, which is the Maoist Center. They are obviously from the days of the CCP in China, the early days. That's the opposition. Then there's another opposition party. That's also a Communist Party. These are more unified socialists. They are also the third main party, which is the second opposition party. So when you have these sort of options on the table, what do you think is going to happen to people? What do you think they're just going to be like? Well, everything's fine. And I can look at the neighboring countries. I can see, for example, democracy in the Republic in Korea, despite everything else that has been going on recently with the CCP and their influence on rigging elections and installing their own candidate, Lee Jae-myung. But they can see that life could be different. They could look at India, for example. That's also next door. And they could see that despite issues in India, they still have relatively a more stable system than what they are having or what China has. Now, the other problem for dictatorships that are not as strong, like what you're seeing in Nepal, is that they're not very good at being authoritarian. They can do authoritarianism as long as people just keep their head down and say, yes, dear. But if people fight back, they always crumble. It's very different to when Chairman Mao was in charge of China and his soldiers, who were brutal. They were going after everybody. But these are, kiddie dictatorships, and they're not very good at their jobs of being villains. Mr. Rainbow says the people who brought you Law and Order comes out the new show called Law and Order Nepal. That's spelled, you spelt it Naples for some reason. The collapse of government. That was a good one. First Last says the camera looks better. We can see all the wrinkles forming from your marriage already. Congrats. I know, it's bad, isn't it? It's not the marriage, it's just I don't know what's going on with my forehead, but anyway, thanks for the compliment, I guess. Rubate says, congrats on your wedding. Is the main trigger for the uprising the removal of free speech and social media? Yeah. I look at those entities as their safety valves. If you shut it off, things get nasty. Yes. This is the thing, by the way. It's the modern tech since the end of 20th century, in the beginning of the 21st. And this is actually the products of capitalism and the American empire. Social media and the access to information, the way the modern internet works, is all thanks to America. They are now being used to bring down dictatorships. Whether you're looking at, as I said, Islamic socialist dictatorship of Iran or communist parties in Nepal or any other place right now. So if I were members of BRICS or basically the Eastern globalists or any sort of dictatorship, I will be very, very angry at America and the American empire, because they're like, even when you're not invading, even when the American military is not coming to take over our countries, your influence is still here. You are poisoning our kids with the idea of freedom and self-determination and your stupid democracy. They're not happy about any of this, by the way. So yes, these days, before what happened in China in the early 1990s, when they completely shut down the revolution and killed everybody, they didn't have this. If they had social media, which people in the West take it for granted, even when you say social media, people don't take it seriously. Oh, it's just social media accounts. It's just fun. And it's just part of it. It's a bonus in your life. But actually, the rest of the world, it's extremely, extremely important. Even in Egypt and Tunisia, the Arab Spring, the actual initial Arab Spring, not when the whole thing got taken over by all the coups and CIA and also the other side. The initial trigger in Tunisia and then in Egypt was actually because of Facebook. Facebook groups and Facebook events was used to organize these things. That was before authoritarians realized that they need to do a crackdown on social media. So they learned from that. Even the 2009 Green Revolution, the Green Movement in Iran, was actually primarily Facebook, and also the early days of Twitter. And then they realized, now we need to do a crackdown. Ironically, we now have our so-called Western liberal democracy governments also doing a crackdown on social media. So, because even they've realized the power of social media and new media is not just going to be a threat against dictatorship, it's also going to be a threat against big governments in the West, even if they are technically democracies. Now, the super chat, people have had it with leftism. A true patriotic police join with the people against the tyranny as happened in Romania. Yeah. I mean, again, there's this wave is going to be a big test for those who serve in authorities, whether it's talking about the police or the armed forces. So far, apparently in Nepal, the army are taking the communist side. So I think they're also seeing it as an opportunity for them to take over a different type of dictatorship, but they do have guns and people don't have guns. That's the difference. Nebel says, you think our socialists watch this? Yeah, they probably don't consider Nepal as a real communist country. So, Dawn says that Trump is making some sort of a proclamation at the 4:30. I think it has something to do with Venezuela. So what time is it? What time do I have? How long is it now? I can't even see. Oh, it's in about 25 minutes. When I watched the briefing, she sort of implied it at the end. Yeah, we'll find out. I have a feeling the president might hit Venezuela again. So, of course, we will keep you guys posted at some point later on. It's a bit of a mess right now. Also, Trump had to come out to say, I didn't know Israel was going to hit Qatar earlier. Hey, no one told me. Sure. Deb, thank you for the members of Tousi TV Plus. Deb says a lot of communist regimes need to fall. The problem is that they will likely be replaced by something worse like Islam. It depends on the culture. So it's not necessarily that who's going to be the automatic alternative. It's about what your culture in your tribe and in your nation actually desire. If your culture is already, for example, in Iraq, you get rid of Saddam, a bad guy, but they're not ready for a liberal democracy. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to elect a corrupt government, and then they're just going to allow Islamists to take over and make it even worse than under Saddam's leadership. Whereas, for example, cultures like in Iran, where they used to have parliamentary democracy and human rights and everything else and free speech, they know if they get rid of the IRGC, they're just going to bring back democracy because they've had it before. It really depends on the culture. Pork says, does this mean the Dalai Lama may eventually get to return home? Probably not, for different reasons. I hope Gen Z have had enough in our country soon. Yeah, no, the other way around. They're all going left again. In fact, it was Ben Shapiro that did this research earlier on that showed the Gen Z have once again gone completely insane with socialism. So that's fun. Some of them have gone slightly more prudish when it comes to the topics around sex and dating, but they are very much against having kids, and that's one of the big issues. And of course, they love big government. Our youth in unemployment is at 17 to 25% across the country. Maybe our kids will rise up when our government censors us completely. Now they won't. The paramedic Patriot says, a drone hit Greta's poor boat today. I was so upset. It wasn't a drone. We did get the full footage with the act from the CCTV on the boat. One of the idiots on the boat, on the flotilla boats, set up the flare with the flare gun, and it misfired. It dropped on the boat itself, and then they started freaking out. And then one of the guys who was there thought it would be a good idea, a great opportunity to take out his phone, start recording a video saying, we just got hit by an Israeli drone. They didn't realize there's a CCTV camera. The whole thing got exposed. It was a completely embarrassing situation. I'll find the footage later and post it for you guys in case you haven't seen it. I'll post it on X. Of course, make sure to follow me on X, Maya Tousi. The link is also, the handle is in the description alongside all the other social media handles. Of course, the main important thing is for you guys to get complete access to our channel. So you have to join Tousi TV Plus. The QR code is right here, or just go on tousi.tv. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tousi, and we are the media.